Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. Yesterday was the big, long anticipated WWDC stream. Thank you so much to everyone new and old alike who tuned in, who contributed to a very lively conversation, to all the people who joined our Discord afterwards. It's very lively there, people sharing their own experience from everything from the design, the installation experience, to actually playing around with some hardcore shortcuts, even taking advantage of private cloud compute. So, as always, go to all the links in the description to see the Discord, the different social media, the way you can support this channel. It all helps, and we can all grow together here as a community. We have Nathan Baker in the chat saying hello from Massachusetts. Well, hello back from Berlin, Germany. Don't think I remember you in the chat. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome as well. We have plenty to talk about this. You can see from my Mac background here, of course, I do have macOS 26 Lake Tahoe installed. I also have iOS 26 installed on my iPhone, which was definitely a brave thing of me to do, given how critical my iPhone is to my everyday life. Yes, it's also on my iPad right here next to me, of course, where I always look at the chat and seeing how the stream performs. And of course, I have it on my Apple Watch and on my Apple TV 4K right in front of me. Now, I'm not going to be watching a video on the TV today as I did yesterday, so I have plenty to share. Obviously, I had to work, so my experience is not quite like a 24 hours later or something like that, though I did push through the night quite a bit to gain more experience, to listen to what you guys have said and shared. So thank you so much to encouraging me to do so, helping me to do so, and contributing yourself as well. We also have some developer specific things to react to, as Apple has actually announced quite a bit of gaming related news. Now, during DubDub itself, the news about the actual game ports coming to Mac and iPad, that was a little bit scarce, unfortunately. They might be waiting a little bit more for the actual hardware like M5 Max and iPads to coincide with such reveals. And it might just be the case that right now, beyond stuff like Crimson Desert, we don't really have anything new. And it might be the case that with Metal 4, maybe some development is getting changed around a little bit, because Metal 4, especially to anybody of you who have followed NVIDIA technology on the PC side for the last few years, there is a lot of interesting stuff coming to Metal 4 that has been quite impactful on PC when it comes to gaming technology. So we are going to react to that as well. In addition, now this is very much depending on you guys. I have pre-downloaded a few videos when it comes to the iOS 26 reveal, people talking about liquid glass. Now, I personally, while this is in many ways a reaction channel, you guys know we react to everything from the actual news to the reviews that are launched by people to opinion pieces by other people. So I have no problem looking at what Mr. Rooster Boss has to say, at what MKBHD has to say, very in-depth breakdowns like what Zolotech provides. We can do all of that, but I would prefer to hear from you guys directly. What is the kind of stuff you would like me to react to? Maybe you've heard somebody say something controversial, or you want to really like have a debate where maybe they said something that's very appealing to you, but it's something that's contradicted by something that I am saying, right? So there is plenty, but I also warn you, of course, I do plan to stream daily up until at least Friday, right? So we do still have plenty time to react to stuff. And don't forget, I will keep you up to date when new betas launch. Yes, I will not be providing you the in-depth stuff that Zolotech, for example, does, or Brandon Butch, or people like that. I hope I pronounced that wrong. Maybe it's Butch. But I will be reacting to stuff when that launches, and more importantly, from the perspective of somebody who uses all those kinds of devices with those betas in real life, I will let you know, for example, if those betas are worth installing for you. For example, for iOS 26, I do have one dev criteria to anybody living in Germany, where I live, which is the app Deutsche Bahn, which is the main app for like the German public transport and stuff like that. Everything from city transport to transport between cities. It simply does not work. No matter how you like restart your phone or re-download the app, it just simply crashes. And a lot of people have very, very important boarding passes in those apps that just don't work. Thankfully, mine is actually, and I complained about that a few months ago, mine is in a separate app, and I was like, oh, I actually want it in the Deutsche Bahn app like everyone else. But now it's helping me, because now I don't need that app that's currently crashing, and my app that's kind of specific for my city actually works. So there is a lot of stuff, and of course, if you're in the United States, the United Kingdom, well, any other country, I do recommend you look into content from people who are also more local, because they will have those stories that I just wouldn't think of covering, right? I don't have those apps to test them. I don't know the language to see if anything might be screwed up on that front. So all I am saying is my own perspective and my reaction to the perspective of others. Jan joining from Hamburg. I hate pronouncing German words in an English way, but that's what you sometimes do when you're already speaking English. Guys, we have so many people joining live. Before we get fully started with all of it, my shout out for you to do the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here. Subscribe if you haven't yet done so. Like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. I love interacting with a lively comment section, getting your agreements, your disagreements, learning about you, learning about your needs, your preferences and content. So that helps me be a better live streamer in that regard. And of course, you can support this channel directly via super chats and stickers while I'm live. You can also become a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Max Maximus, Steve, and Jonathan, who are our MarkTech Pro Max supporters here in this channel. You can also support us over on Patreon. And of course, as I said before, come to our Discord, follow me on social media. The links for all of that are in the description of this channel. Jan saying, you have installed the iOS beta, and except for lower battery life, everything seems okay. You notice that it's a beta, but there are no big issues, and you're using it on the 16 Pro Max. Well, I'm using it on the 15 Pro Max, and also, honestly, on my iPhone, it hasn't really been that negative. I would say of all the operating systems that I've installed it on, and again, I cannot talk to visionOS because I do not own an Apple Vision Pro, it's the iPad. But even then, overnight, my iPad became way more stable. So maybe it had to do a lot of indexing. Like on my Mac, it literally said, I'm doing indexing, right? When you open Spotlight Search with the new app library, there was a bar on top saying indexing. And once that was over, like another 5-10 minutes after that, so maybe some of the background tasks were still working, my Mac like started working completely regularly. I tried every single app on my Mac, including Parallels Desktop, which is a virtual machine, which is notorious to misbehave on the new beta, and it all works absolutely fine. If there are some crucial things, like I don't use like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere, right? So I cannot speak to those kinds of mission critical production applications. Like a lot of the games that I play are like smaller games in emulators. So in emulators and emulators, because I do play some games that aren't in emulators. So yeah, for my experience thus far has been very positive. Yeah, Gurman said on Twitter, I believe, or on Threads. Yeah, I believe it's on Twitter because I commented on it, which I usually don't. I left Twitter, now I'm back specifically for this. He said it's the worst beta in 12 years, and he literally just said that based on vibes, right? Because it is a big redesign, so you expect it to be buggy, but that's not true. iOS 26 has bugs in things that it's trying to achieve with iOS 26, which is, I would argue, the blur is broken in some places where it definitely should be more pronounced. I would argue some of the glass animations are not yet perfect. But the actual system, anybody who has used iOS 13 beta, like, you know that iOS 26 is by no means the buggiest beta, even in the last 5-6 years. So yeah, Mark Gurman, I doubt that Mark Gurman even uses the betas himself in like a very like reviewer kind of way. So yeah, he can shut up about that kind of stuff. Benveni, Apple needs to add blur effects in Control Center. That's the first thing I'm actually covering in terms of my own personal impressions. And it's something that I've shared with you guys also on Twitter. Please ignore me watching Switch Force. Not a fan of the channel, just watching right now every Switch review I can get my grubby hands on. And yeah, I made this screenshot specifically because I think it shows the issue with the poor blur, right? Because there is a blur. It's just very subtle, and it should be way more pronounced in Control Center. And I just don't understand why there isn't just a, like, you see, it's already making, it's kind of not really blurring out the background, but it's making it dark, right? So just add a subtle blur to that, and you're golden. A lot of this looks great, but because Control Center itself is trying to present like the layer that isn't the icons is almost transparent. You see some stuff like the airdrop stuff, it's way too vibrant, right? Because it's this subtle, very bright blue against a white tone, right? It just looks like nothing, right? To me, I'm not colorblind, but I do have slight color issues. This to me looks almost like nothing until I focus, right? And you guys see, by the way, I am a man of my word. I do not like this little circular inputs. However, I do like them more now because it seems like Apple is cleverly differentiating between icons, which remained, thank God, rounded squares, but inputs, and that's now true across Mac, iPhone, iPad, they are circles or like these ovals, like rectangular ovals. So maybe over time I could get used to it, so just that I could put a lot more of these kinds of controls. But yeah, this is actually the only screenshots that I took for this, because I think all the rest is quite well done on the internet. But specifically that missing blur effect has been bugging me. And specifically because when you even look at Control Center now on Mac, it does have a decent amount of blur, and it's only on one part of the screen. So it's not likely to interact with as many different elements underneath. On the iPhone, it's full screen, right? So it will cover every icon or every part of the video that is underneath. And yeah, we definitely need a blur under there. Alex Frank, VisionOS is okay. Jupyter is missing. Oh, true. Yeah, they promised Jupyter, but I assume some stuff will always launch closer to the actual release. For example, I personally was surprised that the gaming app was already out. I almost expected the gaming app to be like a server-side change that like needs to be enabled by the time the beta comes out, by the official version comes out, or like it gets very close to it, like maybe what is it called? Like a release candidate. But no, we already have the gaming app, and my God, it's such a big change for the Mac. On iPhone, iPad, I would argue the App Store was always good at managing apps. On the Mac, it just was atrocious, the Mac App Store. So I'm really great that's changing. The Mac display is kind of laggy. Depends on what time of usage it is. To me, basically all lag has gone away, but sometimes there will be like one specific function or animation that then forces the Mac into being a little bit stuttery, a little bit buggy. Yeah. Drama Llama, haven't seen you in a while. Thank you so much for joining. According to the iOS subreddit, the accessibility feature, reduced transparency, is the best feature now. Well, depending on if you actually need it, yeah, that's like there has never been an iOS version that's been more transparent in that way. So reducing transparency is crucial. I just would prefer not to need it by default. Severe weather, don't remember you. A lot of new people. How's the experience on Mac and iPhone so far? Mac and iPhone are actually the standouts to me because they are super stable, especially the Mac, specifically with every app. On iPhone, as I mentioned in the very beginning of the stream, I do have issue with a major app here in Germany, Deutsche Bahn, but overall the operating system is actually incredibly stable overall. And the core new animation works and work and stuff like that, and they work predictably. They are stable, even if some of them are slightly stuttery. On the Mac, it's not perfect. Like this is definitely not like a 120 hertz. But it is way better than I would expect from a radical redesign first beta. The only thing I cannot tell to you about when it comes to iPhone is battery life, because all the time that I used it yesterday with iOS, just so I could force it into indexing and stuff like that, I used it while connecting to power. And today, because of work and everything, I basically used it during like my lunch break while everyone was freaking smoking around me again. Hate that. But this is my iPhone barely lost any battery, so at least it doesn't seem to have any battery-related bugs. But that being said, I haven't yet tested adaptive battery mode or any other changes like that. I'm actually very interested to do so. Seems very smart to actually not don't cut ProMotion entirely, right? Stuff like that. Maybe find some places where the processor can be clocked like 10% lower or something like that. So adaptive power mode is definitely something I want to play around with. However, I will tell it to you, of course, relative to the experience of beta 1. I do expect a lot of stuff to improve going forward. I also expect some stuff to change, similar to how iOS 7, and we talked about that even during yesterday's stream. Do you guys remember how much more subtle a lot of transparency animations were part of that, but also some of the neon super bright colors changed from iOS 7 to iOS 8, iOS 9, and then I would argue iOS 10 is where we have been for the last 8 years. Now, we have gained a lot of new stuff. We have gained lock screen complications. We have gotten several changes with the control center and stuff like that. We've had the customizable home screen experience, all of that. But when it comes to the core aesthetics, from iOS 10 to iOS 18, I would argue does look distinctly different than iOS 7 did. And some middle step with iOS 8 and 9 happened before that. RR, this time a little too much courage by Apple. The question is, you have to understand that so much of this stuff is not even that old, right? Even that control center that I'm showing you here, right? That's a year old. It's in the iOS 18 control center, right? Now, that one is slightly changed from previous version, but like that full customizable control center, now with stuff that even like third parties are integrating and whatever, that's a year old, right? The widgets, yes, they are like from iOS 14 and whatever, but even that isn't too long ago. That's like 5 years ago at most now. So imagine all the muscle memory that literally hundreds of millions of people built up with all those changes. Now, I do believe that some stuff should have changed more. For example, I do believe that lock screen / notification center should have been adjusted more. Um, but when it comes to just the raw redesign, I think this is about as much as Apple can pull off without pissing people off, especially on all the operating systems, right? Maybe they could have done more on just the iPhone if they had focused just on iPhone, but this is a redesign that goes across 5 operating systems, following in the in the footsteps of an operating system that was introduced just 3 years ago with visionOS, with a product that's still very new on the market, the Vision Pro, working on an operating system language that is consistent with a product that Apple plans in the next 2 to 3 years, which is Apple Glasses. I don't think they could have done too much more without pissing people off. Severe weather. Thanks for the report. I'm thinking of installing the beta on my phone, but probably not to the Mac until beta 3. Yeah, depending on, maybe ask around what's the experience. Like, so many people install the betas these days that honestly, I think almost every major app is tested at this point very quickly. But like, maybe if you have a few critical apps, right, that you know you rely on every day, maybe make sure that those are covered, right? MXGGZ saying you're also considering downloading the beta, but I'm not completely sure if I'm because of the feedback. Also, guys, don't forget the public beta starts next month. I know there's always FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. But don't hurt yourself in the pursuit of this, right? I myself would have installed iOS at the very least on a separate product, right? I should have gotten an iPhone 12 mini like last week, one that needs some slight repairs and stuff like that, but I kind of forgot because of some family issues. So it's all on my devices, but don't forget, I do this for this channel. And while this channel is a hobby, it's not a profession. If it was, I would have separate products for all of this, and I would write it off my taxes. But I do it because I really, really love covering this stuff. I love interacting with you guys, getting your inputs. So yeah. So don't hurt yourself just because you're like, oh, it's the fresh new thing. Believe me, it will be fresh for weeks and months to come. There is no need for consistency between visionOS and glassOS. Both have different use cases. Microsoft tried this in Windows Phone and failed. I'm not saying that it's any of this is needed. I do have some criticisms towards iOS 26, where I do believe they copied visionOS a little bit too directly. I have said before this event, time and time again, that because iOS, because macOS, iPadOS, those are flat screen experience, right? It's a screen you tap with your finger or you use your mouse on. It's one screen right in front of you, right? It's not like dual screen that can do 3D. It's not having constant pass through of video onto your retinas, right? That combines with everything. Glass makes so like, and this is why I love Alan Dye, who was responsible for the design and feel of visionOS, and that's because I do believe that glass was the perfect material to choose for it. And I think that visionOS 3 going further by like integrating stuff, like you can literally put like a calendar on the wall or a clock on the wall, right? And you can create even like borders around them as if they were like a painting on your wall. That's gorgeous. I think visionOS honestly is probably the best looking operating system on the market right now. Windows, Android, even Mac and iPhone. I hope that over time, as they copy these liquid glass elements to iPhone, iPad, Mac, that they learn to adjust it to a more two-dimensional plane, because they originally took it from something very three-dimensional. Valor saying, how goes the clipboard history in Spotlight? Is it as good as Paste or PasteBot? This is something I cannot speak about because I do not use those tools. I have not tried it yet. I will, though, going into tomorrow. My experience with my Mac has been primarily about stability. And yes, Jan, macOS beta is stable, and testing out all my apps. So I could at least talk to that. Is iOS 26 stable for everyday life? To be quite honest, probably not. And my answer is not actually based on iOS 26 beta 1, but iOS beta 2 and 3 are kind of notorious for being worse than beta 1. So if you force yourself into the betas, into the developer betas right now, you will end up potentially being screwed because something that works on beta 1 might then get fucked over, I apologize for the crude language, by beta 2 or beta 3. So on Macs, that happens less so. To be honest, I do think that there are, in general, less changes on Mac, so it's primarily a visual overhaul that is less likely to screw the system. But beta 1, yes, it's good, and I could recommend it in a vacuum, but I've just been through too many releases where iOS, I'll just make something out, like 17 beta 3, and I actually think that that's a correct example, was worse than the predecessors. So I like the depth in the icons on Mac. I do too. That's the main reason why I bought one in the first place. Well, that's cool. A lot of people, I assume, will be complaining to me by September about having to work with a huge redesign. And Jan, you're saying that you like the 3D backgrounds to make them out of photos in iOS 26. I should try that. I actually didn't think about it because I was playing around with the new wallpaper, but I kind of didn't like it. I don't like the default iOS 26 wallpaper. Um, but because you guys are also asking a lot of questions about compatibility, first of all, help each other out, right? Because you guys know a lot. Then, second, please like the stream. We have double the people watching as we had yesterday, so that helps a lot. And we have way more people than likes, so help the likes catch up to the people. That helps tremendously. That will attract new people to the stream. And those new people can then help you with info as well. But also, I'll post this, and I'm not doing this just to help myself, I promise. Yeah, Mohammed, I do understand German too. How do you think I am translating stuff that is getting posted in German right into English? I don't have AI baked into myself. But I do want to share the Discord link because we have so many new people right now there sharing all those kinds of experiences and answering the kinds of questions that you guys have. So to me, it just makes sense to give you that. You can even join for just a day or two to get your fix, and then later on leave if you feel like it. But I do believe it will help a lot because I think a lot of channels right now are very much like laser focused. Oh, what's the design? Like, do people like or hate it? Will Steve be rolling around in his grave? Right? All that kind of bullshit. And I will be criticizing elements too, but allow paste. But I think that we can build a much healthier community that engages on those topics a lot more productively. Severe weather, yeah, 10R and 10S are no longer supported. It's for the SE second generation, so that's actually going pretty far back, and for the iPhone 11. So it's A13 processors and up, basically devices with A12 chips were cut, at least on the iPhone side. I would be surprised if the 3D function wasn't working on iPhone 12. And this is why I also have, of course, the web open, is because I do think that we can actually go to the features and see like because Apple does have small monikers next to them saying what compatibility is actually happening. Benveni joined the chat. I don't have AI barked in myself. Did I say barked? I thought I said baked into myself. Mohammed, you subscribed. Thank you so much. Benveni telling others to join the Discord. Yeah, I've seen you've been pretty busy there, sharing your dislike of the poor blur in Control Center. I will have to say though, and I do understand criticizing these things. In fact, I encourage criticizing these things, but I do not understand why some people are like the amount of comments, even on Blue Sky, that I have seen on people saying, "Oh, Steve would have fired everyone." Like, guys, do you remember even the official release of iOS 7? How many of those kinds of very much too vibrant, poorly legible elements it had? Like, we are in the first beta of this. You're supposed to give Apple your feedback of not liking this, but don't be mean. Like, people put a lot of work into this. Like, be mean and say, "Oh, this looks bad," right? You can even say, "Oh, it's something looks like crap," but don't be an asshole and say like, "Oh, all of you should be freaking fired." That's somebody's livelihood. I don't like that kind of coverage. Severe Weather, I do know a lot of people were not aware the supported devices. Yeah. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be saying these kinds of stuff, but sometimes people ask for the compatibility of the operating system. Sometimes people ask for the compatibility of specific features. So keep that in mind. You can also like say add and choose a name and then basically respond to them more directly. Mohammed asking if you should install iOS 26 on your iPhone 12. To be quite honest, my first response would be no. Because I already said iOS does have a tendency of beta 3 or so being worse than beta 1. Also, Mohammed, and I said that before, if you do rely in Germany here on the Deutsche Bahn app, then you will be screwed. There's no way currently to make it work on iOS 26. So wait for the public beta is usually my recommendation. Joshi, what do you think about the macOS 26 update overall? I would actually say, and this might sound a little bit fanboyish, I absolutely love it on macOS. I've seen some people hate on the Finder icon. No idea why. I mean, it's literally just reverse. It's any Star Trek fans here? Like what are they called? Like Star Trek, the black and white aliens. Where my nerds be at here? Yeah, those two guys, right? And basically, it was a very poor racism metaphor. But hey, it was the U.S. in the '60s. It's good that they had any racism metaphor that said racism is bad. And basically, one side hunted and enslaved the other because one side was black on the right side and left on the white side, but the other people were white on the right side and black on the left side. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening with the Finder's icon, where people are like, "Oh, the Finder's icon looks horrible," and it's literally just like, it's literally, oh, we changed the colors from one side to the other. Jan, a nerd question. You wanted to buy yourself a PS5 controller that's called a DualSense. You want to use it for Apple Arcade for iPad and Mac. Well, I use actually a lot of Apple Arcade games. I probably should make a actual stream out of this because this might eat too much into that. But yeah, for one, I do highly recommend the DualSense controller. In my opinion, it's the best controller right now on the market. It has actually great compatibility with iOS and macOS, so you are getting a lot of help from Apple directly. In fact, if you even have a PS5, Sony just announced yesterday that they will be optimizing the DualSense to pair with multiple devices. So it's less of a hassle to switch between controlling your PlayStation and between controlling, for example, your Apple device. And I guess I can look into like my app drawer. Like in terms of arcade games, well, if you don't have already a version of Vampire Survivors, that's a game I recommend. Vampire Survivors. So that one has a plus version um, on the Mac. Then Getting Over It is a fun app. It's deliberately has clunky controls. You're supposed to get up a mountain and then through some basically bad stuff. And it controls like crap, but on purpose. Otherwise, you have a lot of ad-free versions of a lot of like regular games. You have obviously all the board games like backgammon, right? Obviously, that's kind of self-explanatory. The Jetpack Joyride games, that includes part 1 and 2. It definitely includes part 1. I'm not sure about Jetpack 2, but Jetpack 2 is also a good game by itself when it comes to smaller stuff. It has Fruit Ninja, it has Cut the Rope, it even has like Doodle Jump now, and it has Pro Tour Golf. That's been something that I've been playing around with recently. And then there are just a ton of smaller games that are like designed to be like very like serene, like Tint the Game on Apple Arcade. Do you have it? Yeah, so basically it's like a puzzle games where you connect colors with like watercolors, and it's really fun. And if you have kids, that's a really fun thing to show them too. Um, so hope that helped too. Yeah, yeah. Right now there are days of play from Sony. That's why a lot of Sony hardware right now is cheaper. So hope that helped you guys. Okay, so now I actually will continue looking into iOS. So we talked a lot about the design. I tried the clear stuff. The clear stuff is just clearly, haha, see what I did there? Not for me. This is where like readability really goes to die. You would have to have a wallpaper that like basically a pure black wallpaper would kind of be best for this. I have actually, again, because I have not switched around with too many wallpapers, I have not played too much with the lock screen. The app icons I think are great. They're about as subtly changed as you can get without not changing them in a way, but that's because their shapes and iconography is so iconic, for the lack of a better word. They are kind of brands in of themselves, and yeah, I think the subtle changes work really well. Obviously, they're not so subtle if you go with the clear mode, but going from changes in recent years, like the introduction of dark icons, basically, it has worked. Like I think it's just very good accumulated progress. Josh is saying, I like the update on the Mac too, and also the change of the cursor. It's a little bit more rounded. Is it? Maybe it's a little bit more cute because there is a new cursor on the iPad, right? And that's one that's supposed to be like still a little bit different than the one on the Mac. But yeah, I'm just seeing now because my iPad is on my side. It's connected to my Mac. It's almost like an external screen. But yeah. The cursor, a lot of the subtle changes are really great. Nathan Baker, are they gonna ever bring the rounded apps or no? No. And I've tried telling that to people leading up to that, and hopefully, because we have new people watching here, it's there is a psychological and like a philosophical question here, which is that. Icons are somewhat reflective, haha, the glass. Oh, my iPad just crashed. How nice. Oh, it's just the springboard crashed. Okay, not the actual operating system. the icons are supposed to reflect the shape of the screen, at least in my opinion. Now, why are they rounded squares, right? Well, for one, the roundedness kind of reflects a touch target because our fingers are round, right? Why are they square? Well, because the iPhone does not really have, even though technically portrait is the best, but you can use it in landscape and in portrait, so you're not going to make it portrait white or you're not going to make it landscape white. You're just going to give it a square icon, and you're going to round it off to make it look more friendlier, make it look more like a touch target, right? Control elements are now rounded to distinguish them all from the actual icons. That's subtle. You can argue whether that was necessary or not. On the iPad, that's even more true because the iPad is way closer to a square aspect ratio with a 4:3, or at worst, like a kind of 3:2 screen. Macs are widescreen, but it would look like really space wasting if any of these icons were, like, for no good reason, double the width, right? And it would really clash with the experience of iPhone and iPad, right? But for example, when you look at the Apple TV has widescreen icons because all Apple TVs are always connected to widescreen apps, and they're controlled differently than the iPhone because you don't tap it, you just swipe on your remote or click left and right in your remote. You just get, basically, like, it doesn't matter how large an icon is, the switch to the next icon happens at the exact speed no matter what. On the Apple Watch, it gets a little bit more complicated because you technically do have a screen that's very similar actually to that shape, maybe a little bit more elongated. What is it, a 5:4 aspect ratio or something like that? But the reason why they're circular is because the main UI element that Apple associates with the Apple Watch is not actually the rounded squared screen, but it's actually the circular watch faces that you traditionally associate with a watch. So that's why they're circular. And then on the Apple Vision Pro, they're circular because your vision, it's technically more oval, right? It would be more in line with this. But similar to the Mac thing, it would be kind of space wasty if they were suddenly double the width just to be more oval. So, yeah, this is why I don't think that iOS, iPadOS, and macOS are ever getting circular icons. Hope that helps. I might be totally wrong, but as long as the current design team, which is still based upon, like, a lot of the work that Johnny Ive has created and a lot of the philosophy behind it, as long as those people are still in charge, I don't expect Apple to randomly switch to circular icons. Sorry. It's been a long work day, relatively, for the short night that I have. Also, one change to the Photos app. If some of you dislike the changes in the Photos app in iOS 18, you now have two tabs down below. I would argue they're not ideally placed. That's kind of like, right now it's just like fucking a little bit with muscle memory, but for the collections you don't have to scroll down. They're actually separate from your end shade, who actually played around with the new shortcuts features. So feel free to ask him like what's his experience there. Seems like it's pretty positive. Seems like you can even nicely take advantage of private cloud compute. Obviously, like the Spotlight search stuff, that's even more supercharged in a similar way, but I haven't yet gotten to try that. Not actually for lack of trying too much, but because I don't actually have yet memorized the inputs, right? Like, what was it? To create a reminder, you type in AR into Spotlight search or something like that. Again, these are day one impressions. So I did not have to yet deal with spam in any way. I did not yet have to create a poll. But oh my god, I actually forgot about the backgrounds. I forgot everything related to wallpapers, whether it's the system wallpapers or the wallpapers that you can build into iMessage. That's something I'll be definitely doing leading into tomorrow's stream. Um, that's something a lot of US related stuff. So the new games app, I would argue on the iPhone and iPad, it's very nice, but it's probably not a huge necessity because the iOS App Store has always respected games quite a lot. The Mac App Store, not so much. So, this is where it's way more crucial. And obviously, because developers have not yet fully integrated with this, because it's not yet an official feature, you do not yet benefit from things like events. Like, this is the operating system where I have experienced the smallest amount of issues when it comes to, like, how does the blur work? How does the transparency layer work, right? So, yeah, definitely when it comes to design, the Mac is great. It will take a while to get used to all of the details, like, for example, Spotlight Search now being connected to an app library and the app library replacing Launchpad that was there before. Now, thankfully, for my everyday use, even though the iPad lost it, and that's a feature that was specifically designed for iPad, the Mac actually retains Stage Manager, at least for now. And anybody who watches my streams, you know I love having my Stage Manager, my running apps right here on the side. So that's something that I've thus far enjoyed. If not taken yet advantage of phone app functionality or live activities. And yeah, I definitely should be learning how to use these kinds of like shortcuts and basically quick controls in Spotlight Search. I know some of you use like very like professional apps, including things like managing your clipboard history. I honestly, this is also stuff that I wish would come to iPhone, and this is something that I cover a lot with one of my regular viewers, Jimmy James. Uh, Apple needs like yesterday, and by yesterday I mean like 5-10 years ago, a volume mixer, like a system level audio control, because they're adding so many powerful productivity and I would even argue nerdy features. The fact that they don't have a simple volume mixer that does the same thing as a volume mixer in Windows XP in macOS 26 is just insane to me. So the design is fun, and again, here, because you might actually have a very widescreen experience with just a wallpaper, unless you're somebody who clutters up your desktop, you might actually be fine even with the clear design if you, of course, choose the right wallpaper. You also get basically control center, right? I mean, for a while Apple didn't call it that, but now it is. And it's also customizable. And yes, it does have these beautiful effects of where if you make it brighter or darker. It's actually interesting that this is something that is on the Mac that isn't on the same way on iPhone and iPad, because if you were supposed to touch it right where this magnifying glass appears, well, that's where your finger would be, right? It wouldn't really help in any meaningful way to see that. But on the on the Mac, it kind of lets you focus more on what's underneath. So that's a playful adjustment of like a system difference between iPhone, iPad, and Mac, because you're supposed to use those operating systems a little bit differently. And yes, all apps have a little bit slightly changed designs. You see a pretty good example of that right now in Safari, with the top bar being transparent with what's underneath. So that might take a little bit of getting used to, right? I think it's a very pretty effect. Hopefully none of that consumes too much battery life or whatever. And then, yeah, you have like these almost floaty controls inside it that are not connected by like one continuous bar. Even here, when you look at it, these tabs, they like don't cuddle against each other. They don't hug each other. They like they're like they're like water droplets with a little gap between each other, right? So that's interesting. Might all take some getting used to. On the Mac, honestly, I've gotten used to it right away. I feel like on the iPad it's not quite as intuitive, but then again, some of it might just relate to the fact that some of the animations are not yet that smooth. The iPad is definitely the one system that I would argue right now is the buggiest, and that's probably to blame on the fact that it kind of got the biggest changes. I mean, there is a reason why iPadOS was covered last in yesterday's WWDC, and that's obviously because it had that new multitasking system and stuff like that. Chris Thompson asking, "What up? All is good, man. At least for now." Just covering my day one impressions of iOS, macOS, iPadOS. We're gonna be doing daily live streams for the rest of the week. Going to be reacting to stuff that maybe some other people put out on it. Today, I'm probably not going to stream too long because my voice is still a little bit hoarse from yesterday. So unless I risk breaking it before tomorrow's stream, I'll just take it a little bit easier today. I cannot wait for the new update. Well, you could install it if you chose to. So you get all the features, of course, that are part of iOS and iPadOS, also on Mac, including older features like live activities, the new Spotlight search, the new app library. I would argue I don't like the default layout of the app library, because think about what the app library, and I know it's technically not quite the app library, but think about how many apps are shown by the iPhone with one look at the app library, right? I would argue this is way too small, and there should be folders there too. I know there are more customization options and whatever, but yeah, just for the start, I think it's not bad. But right now, my muscle memory screams back to get Launchpad. But then again, if you're somebody who's, and that still also applies to me, who mostly just uses Spotlight search to specifically look for an app, right? For one, you do get suggestions, which do actually work really well. On Apple's devices. They have worked very well for years now between iPhone and iPad. And if you also search directly in Spotlight search, right, that just makes sense for you to like get at what you want very quickly. And probably, like, if you have a little bit of OCD like me and you always worry about, oh, how do I make Launchpad look perfectly, well, now that worry is kind of gone. You have all the more advanced shortcut customizations. That's cool. All the controls that you can type, or the commands that you can type directly into Spotlight search. I will let you know, because because my Mac was still indexing everything. I'll let you know by tomorrow how that works. Benveni, have you watched the iJustine interview with Craig? Let me actually check. I definitely have not, by the way. So interview with Craig Federici. It's a 7-minute video. Came out 10 hours ago. You know what? I might actually download it, and we might react to that right after. Guys, you see like what Benveni did. You can let me know what you would like me to react to. You can ask your questions. You can send me your agreements or your disagreements. You see, we are here open to criticism, or at least to acknowledging that sometimes you're just used to something more. And right now it can still feel a little weird. Again, shout out to the gaming app, which I think makes the biggest change on the Mac. If I showed it to you now, it would show you my real name in the corner, so I refrain from doing stuff like this. I'll probably gonna try to create, I do have like a guest account on my Mac but it obviously doesn't help much with like app stores and whatever. It just would instantly ask me to log in and whatever. But speaking of the gaming app and gaming functionality, Apple also introduced Metal 4, and you can go to their. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to watch this, but these are like 3 to 4 30-minute videos about Metal 4 that are for Apple developers. And Metal 4, I actually did not expect to get a new Metal. It seems like it took us years and years between Metal 1 and Metal 2, but now we're very quickly up to 4, relatively. And so Metal 4 is helping with AI development. So there's a streamlined API. According to Apple, first-class support for machine learning, native support for tensors in both the API and the shading language. So I guess that makes it a little bit like more ignorable, right? Whether you make it specifically on like the ML APIs, or whether you just program a Metal optimized game app to use AI on the GPU shaders. So I wonder, they do not talk about many performance increases from this. Seems like it's more about simplifying development, but I would be surprised if there weren't at least some performance improvements, at least by the time Metal 4 launches officially with iOS, iPadOS, macOS 26. Rosa, you were saying you're very loving this. I'm really, really glad you are enjoying this. Thank you so much for your continued support. Metal 4 games optimizations is actually, and I gave a shout out to this in the beginning of the stream, where I think that maybe some games that are currently being worked on in Metal 3 might be quickly changing over to Metal 4 because of some specific things that are bringing macOS and iPadOS, whatever, in line with what, for example, NVIDIA has offered for quite a while on PC. There are improvements to shader compilation. It seems like shader compilation is handled well these days by Linux. Obviously, the consoles, they do have precompiled shaders because you're targeting just one specific piece of hardware. And on Macs, shader compilation has been mostly pretty good, even in bad shader engines like Unreal. That being said, Windows is just ass when it comes to default shader compilation, so maybe that could be an improvement to the experience. Of course, Apple has a leg up on Windows by having far fewer potential hardware combinations. But even more importantly about Metal 4 is improvements to Metal effects and ray tracing. So specifically, Metal has improved upscaling, right? So I'm not sure if Metal Effects is supposed to run entirely on the neural engine, or at least also partially on the GPU shaders, but that's improved. There is also including integrated denoising support. Now, anybody who has followed DLSS technology, denoising, especially ray tracing based denoising, which is this is also targeting, that was introduced with DLSS 3.5. Now we are on DLSS 4, but DLSS 4 actually it improved those models further, but it added like multi-frame generation. It really wasn't a great release like for new features. It's just better refined older ones. But yeah, Apple is giving you better upscaling by default, including Metal Effects based denoising, and with that specifically improvements for ray tracing. Ray tracing now supports intersection function buffers to provide more flexible indexing of intersection functions and simplify porting to Metal. So if you have optimized your ray tracing for an AMD or NVIDIA GPU on Windows, or specifically if you just work with DirectX 12 based ray tracing APIs, now this is easier to port. With that, Apple has also launched a new game porting toolkit, and the other new feature that Apple is introducing to Metal Effects is frame interpolation. I don't know why I cannot... Oh, there it is. So basically, frame interpolation takes 2 frames that are being rendered natively by the game engine and then introduces an intermediary frame that uses AI to be smartly looking, right? Because if you just used like even temporary data or whatever, it would look potentially bad. So this is using all the metal effects stuff. Obviously, frame generation, frame interpolation has been on AMD and NVIDIA hardware for a bit. NVIDIA now even offers to generate up to 3 frames between 2 real frames. But that also comes with some latency penalties. So while I do appreciate all of this stuff, I do hope that the frame interpolation works at least well enough to like upscale a 60 FPS game to kind of like a 90 to 120 FPS game. One thing I do not recommend is using frame interpolation, frame generation, is to take like a 30, 40 FPS game and turn it into a 60 or 80 FPS game. You will actually hurt latency and you feed the engine too little data because the frames themselves take up a lot of time. So there's a lot of potential data lost that could be between those frames. So yeah, if your game already runs at 60 FPS or above and maybe you have like a ProMotion Mac, then sure, use frame interpolation to make it into a 100 FPS experience and then VRR will smooth it out. But please don't use that to turn a 30 FPS game into a supposedly 60 FPS game. You will get fucked over by much more rendering artifacts and by higher latency. Benveni, for some reason, what Craig said in the keynote about the personal Siri gave me vibe of it's coming in iOS 27 when he said in the coming year. I've had this debate now with like 5 people. In the coming year, does that mean this year? Right, or in the next year, because I've heard it in both ways now. Guys, we have many people watching. Let me know what's your interpretation of basic English. I have a freaking C2 Cambridge certificate. Like, my English is on a very high level, but I get increasingly fucked by this. Like, I don't know what's correct. Sorry, cannot drink. This is the drink that I mixed myself and they made the raspberries too thick. They're getting stuck there. In the coming year, meaning maybe ChatGPT can or Gemini can tell me. In the coming years means in the next year. That's how I always interpreted that. Now that of course could mean still in the early portion of next year. At that point, we would still be talking about some version of iOS 26. But I've also heard people say that in the coming year, because this year is still here, like, I have no idea. To me, this means that probably by like iOS 26.3.4, we are getting the new personalized Siri. But I've been getting so fucked over by these discussions. It's not your fault, Benveni. It's like people are questioning my basic understanding of English. Riley, I'm late today, but hi. Well, thank you anyway. Believe me, it really doesn't matter. Like, you yourself called out like our Mark Check Pro Max supporters, the people with actual money to support this channel long term. They're the ones showing up the least. But yeah, to each their own, right? I do love everyone. If you just watch, if you like, if you comment, if you subscribe, if you give money, it's all welcome, believe me. So you being here is very much appreciated. You commenting even in the Discord, it's all great. Jesus, I made the drinking experience so ass for me. Just checking. Okay. Seems like everything is working. I'm still getting used to the menu bar on top on the iPad. That will take some getting used to. Riley, my iPhone works. Apps don't work on iOS. Which works? Oh, work apps. Yeah, bro. Like I've told you that myself. Like I said to you that I have like a crappy LG work phone for the hospital. You guys should really be careful with like potentially like mission critical production apps and stuff like that. But still, YOLO. Do you at least have like a secondary device, man? And then I know some of you even might have smartphones for work, right? For me, it's kind of the entire point that it's not a smartphone, at least not a very smart one. So yeah, I hope it still all works out for you, man. Um, and after macOS, I apologize. We are moving over to iPadOS, and after that, I will be watching. I will be watching the crack interview with Justine. Very quickly to watchOS, it's I have very little experience yet with it. So the actual design looks nice. Control center looks pretty, but otherwise I have very little to say on watchOS. Now iPadOS is where you actually guys get my strongest recommendation thus far to not install a specific beta here, and that is iPadOS, because you even saw that during the stream where basically my iPad crashed. It did not crash to like boot screen, but it crashed back to lock screen, and then I had to reopen my running apps. So if your iPad is especially mission critical to you, like Riley's iPhone seems to be to him, then yeah, be careful about that. Now, obviously, I know the iPad did get the biggest change because it did get the redesign plus the new multitasking window. But you might actually feel better if you install the public beta in a month, because by that point it will be refined. A lot of the early like liquid glass overcorrections might be corrected, and the multitasking will be a lot smoother and stuff like that. You will not have as many broken apps. So yeah, keep that in mind. A new windowing system. I have to say, I love this windowing system. I've always liked Control Stage Manager on my Mac, but never that much on the iPad. So this works really well, and specifically why I think it works well is because of actually side by side. So Stage Manager made you choose between side-by-side applications and like a full-on, like, oh, have as many apps as you want on the screen or something like that. I mean, it's literally a toggle in Control Center for you to choose between that, right? But here, you actually get the benefit if you put two apps next to each other, no matter how you space them out, right? You just flick one to the one side and one to the other, and then it basically automatically gives you side by side, including with a center toggle, where if you resize one to the left or right, the same happens to the other app. So it works actually very similar to how full-size side-by-side apps work on Mac, but I would actually argue that the way to invoke them is the most intuitive Apple has ever had, so I'm really glad. And the resizing, it's much more free. It's also very smooth. It doesn't have to blur the app in between or whatever, so you see all the intermediary steps. You can also grab the app by every part of it, right? Previously, it would be one of the bottom corners. Now you can resize it from the top, the bottom, whatever. By default, it will recommend like the lower right corner, but it will work in other ways too. Have not yet tried folders in dock, but I do think that's kind of self-explanatory. The preview app also makes sense. It's something I use a lot on my Mac. And yeah, then you do get all the other stuff. And I don't think that that's actually that important. So more powerful windowing, window tiling, right? So that's the flick gesture that I just described. New ways to control the window, so you get the 3 dots that you're used to from the Mac. That's great. Actually, that one works, of course, best. Well, I'm not actually sure if it works even without a mouse, right? Because it would need the thin cursor. Let me actually check. Windowed apps. No, they do, but then they have to pop up manually. While if you hover over them with a cursor, they'll just get bigger. So thankfully, I just was able to check it, including the resizing, including the menu bar. So I'm actually right now really deep into the iPadOS experience. Riley, the setting UI isn't changed on on watchOS. The setting UI, the setting. You mean the settings app? Maybe that will be added later. Like I assume some stuff is just missing right now. Yeah, right now it's the same. So I assume that's probably just missing for the moment. Let me switch out of the windowed mode right now. Okay, the stream's working. I have you all guys here on my side. So that's my impressions to iPadOS. We've been streaming for a little over an hour, so I feel like I deserve to shout out for you guys to do the YouTube jazz one more time, subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, and let us finish actually today's stream, because I do want to stream tomorrow with more impressions, more deeper insight, and with more reactions to other people's content. Let us actually react to Justine's interview with Craig, and you guys are free to suggest more stuff that we could do today or stuff that I will keep in mind for tomorrow and future streams. Mark Gurman saying this redesign is unbelievably cool. Well, I guess that's good. Also, he has a blue check mark on Twitter, so hopefully that was gifted to him rather than buying it. Interview with Craig Federici. Why is it in portrait? Jesus, Justine, what are you doing? Cute outfit.
Greg, happy WWDC.
It's basically a pajama, but okay. I guess everything is every fashion. By the way, because I was recommending games to you earlier, I also want to recommend a show to you, which is Andor, but I specifically want to recommend it for a specific purpose, which is I think that Andor is some of the freaking best like fictional fashion ever created. I think all of this looks so badass and so cool. So if you're like a visual person, you don't have to like fashion in like a girly way or whatever, but like Andor, it's not just a great Star Wars show, a well-written show, but it also looks absolutely freaking incredible. But going back to Justine.
Thank you so much.
So I have a question before we get into
Jesus, the portrait mode is driving me insane.
actually other questions.
Okay.
Have you heard of Labubus yet?
But just 30 seconds ago was my...
Jesus, like this must feel like I feel like sometimes with my nieces, right? Like interacting with 11, 9-year-olds and stuff like that. My nephew is like 4 or 5. It's really like, yeah, sure I heard it. At least there my niece's nephew use stuff like Roblox. At least I understand that.
My first introduction.
Yeah, so I don't really know much about this either. I just got into it. I found it on TikTok. This is like with all of the rage.
What the fuck? This gives and Ben Vinny, thank you for shouting this out. This gives Apple reviewers like a bad name. It's like it's some of these fucking Twitch streamers who will like review terrorists on stream and will shout them out positively and things like that. And it's like, you're supposed to still have some journalistic thing. Like, I understand you want to have a setup here that makes it like more more friendly, right? You get to know each other a tiny bit, whatever. But like, come on, like, don't be that cutesy.
But I made her a little tiny Apple badge, so she is fully
Did
set.
she open all the doors at Apple Park?
Maybe.
She, like, you see, he actually made a funny joke, and she didn't have a response because it's not a planned interaction anyway. Craig is actually incredibly charismatic. Like, if you think that his charisma is just like faked inside Dub Dub, you don't understand how these productions work. The reason why he got that job, like, to be this presentful, to drive around in like cars as if it's a Formula One car, but then it zooms out and it's like a golf cart basically, driving super slow, the hair shit and things like that. Like, that's because he's actually a charismatic and funny person, and the people producing those events have reacted to this and incorporated that, and obviously they write it to enhance it. But yeah, this is bullshit. Why is she acting like an adolescent? She's trying so hard to have a young image. Yeah, this is like, she's a super respectable woman, right? I understand that there is probably like an incel crowd who looks at her. Oh, they're pretty. Like, I'll go a little bit ham here. They're pretty girls in chat, right? And they look like that guy from 300, you know, that was supposed to be killed at birth, but he still wanted to be a Spartan warrior. With that hunchback and everything, right? Maybe she's trying to stay like young for them, but you're a freaking attractive, super successful woman with like 7 million people YouTube channel, a podcast and whatever. Like, actually present yourself as that. Have the respect. I respect her a lot for what she has achieved. Like, she didn't have to be like half nude all the time to get her viewers or whatever. So she didn't have an OnlyFans on the side to entice some losers to her side. She achieved so much. Why, like, that pajama look, that, like, I want to call it a Beanie Baby, even though I obviously know it's not a Beanie Baby. I'm just fucking ancient. I'm 28.
This is my favorite part, though. She takes
Jesus, you're wasting like a minute.
photos as well.
And got her first WWDC just right out the gates.
It's so true. So it's wild how trends like this kind of take off. So I think that's something fun that we've seen with Apple. Like, you guys are always up on the latest trends, and I love the new 26, the iOS 26.
Wait, what did she say? Did she say Apple jumps up on every trend? Have you been dropped on the head, Justine? Apple is known for not doing that. Apple is not first. Apple has done that a bit with AI last year, but even that came out a good year after everyone else was putting like the Google I/O and the Microsoft Build conference full of AI references. Do you not know the company that you're covering? Oh, Jesus. I want to say something really bad that's a quote from RoboCop, but I just don't want to.
You guys are kind of going with that trend of the transparent glass.
What? How is that the trend? Who else is doing transparent glass? Transparent glass has been in Windows Vista, Aero, right? And then Windows 11 promised to do that, didn't do that. Android 16 looks nothing like this. The latest versions of Windows 11 have done nothing to incorporate that. SteamOS looks nothing like that. PlayStation's operating system looks nothing like that. The Xbox overlay looks nothing like that. The Nintendo Switch operating system looks nothing like it. The majority of Linux distros don't look like it. Where is the trend? Sorry to recommend this, mate. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, I thought you had already watched it. No, it's good. Sometimes, like, Jesus. I needed to go to the bathroom for a moment, but I lost all the water through sweat, through angry sweats right now.
Obviously changing the new naming conventions and kind of moving into this all-new look.
We've been slowly...
I assume something was cut here. My assumption is something was cut here. Of course, they get the Apple girl and underwear model duo. You should have chosen something to say, to make it not clear which is which or who is who. You should have said, of course it's the cutie and the underwear model, right? And we wouldn't know who is who. Tenkel, how does the new clipboard history work? I actually haven't yet experimented with it. Don't know if it's yet there, but feel free to ask around. Guys, somebody in the chat who has already used it. I know some of you have installed it on your Mac. And of course, go to the Discord to see that.
Evolving our platforms, you can only move a platform so fast without having your users, feeling like what happened to my system.
Whiplash,
But over
yeah.
many years, we've moved them to a place where that.
From which movie with a fast character? It's Whiplash. Is that from Days of Future Past?
Last step of getting them.
No, Riley, we don't want Craig for CEO. I think people misunderstand the role of somebody responsible for their specific thing and how that transfers to overseeing everything else. Craig is a software guy. Give him control of all the software, right? That's plenty to do. You do want somebody who has like logistical prowess to be not necessarily CEO always as Tim Cook is right now, but at least very close to power. But then, for example, when you think about Johnny Cerrugi, right? Johnny Cerrugi is literally like working on the chips. Like, he's not just overseeing the teams, he's providing like valuable intellectual property based on that. That's why Apple hired him. That's why he's getting paid the big bucks, right? Also not a good shoe-in for a CEO, right? Now, I get maybe Eddie Q, who like oversaw services, but then Eddie Q has been... I feel like Eddie Q is like 2-3 years away from becoming an Apple fellow, similar to Phil Schiller, where I think he'll just like rest on his money. I think out of everyone who has like a specific role at Apple, yeah, the TSMC CEO at Apple wouldn't be too bad, though Taiwanese work ethics on a US American company, that could really backfire with the employees. Like TSMC, for example, has really complained about like what it means hiring people to work in their factories in the United States, because those people expect to work like half basically of what their Taiwanese workers do. I think out of everyone who right now oversees their own department, John Turnus is the easiest choice. He oversees hardware, and hardware, in my opinion, is the one thing. For one, I don't think that John Turnus is specifically like designing individual pieces of hardware. I think there are people designing chips, modems, displays, cameras, and they bring it together and he says that kind of part, right? This is the kind of work that really easily transfers to a CEO role. So kind of how Tim is very involved with logistics as the CEO, John Turnus could be more involved with hardware. And hardware, in fact, is also by itself connected to logistics. But like, you don't want like a super nerdy chip guy or a super broad software guy to suddenly be responsible for everything else. In fact, what I could see happen in the future, while yes, I do see Apple having only one CEO, I could see the software side being much more powerful by itself, right? So the software leader might almost be like a CEO by himself or herself at some point.
With a very consistent design language was finally in reach. This was the year, liquid glass, of course, was one of the real enablers for that leap. We were able to achieve a unified design. And in a year when we had a unified design, it felt very strange to be talking about iOS this number and macOS this number and tvOS totally different number and visionOS. It was getting very, very complex. And we wanted to express that for the customer, this is kind of one experience across everything. Took the plunge and came up with a simple name, and from the moment we decided, it was kind of a big this is right.
No, and it makes sense. And I think now that everything's all unified, it really is awesome. Okay, starting from
So at least we got like one explanation. I mean, that explanation was kind of self-explanatory. Let's hope we get a few smart questions.
The intro, though, with the F1, you cruising around.
Oh my God, we're wasting time on this. Why are we wasting time on this?
Car with the hair. That was so great. So what was it like kind of filming that? Because you guys do all of these fun things, and I feel like they kind of put you in the spotlight. Like you're always the one that has to do the crazy stuff.
It is strange when our team comes to me and says that what their creative vision is for this WWDC. I hate to break it to everyone, but my experience of that car was like sitting on a box with a green screen behind me with my hands up like this on nothing, and they're like, okay, like pretend you're looking at
Hey,
something
he's super honest about that. Cool.
on your left. All right,
I mean, he has no real reason to lie here, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, good.
But then it was so fun though, kind of going from that experience of knowing what it was like to film it to then seeing that.
Oh yeah, and I saw it for the first time this morning with all of you. I didn't.
No way.
Yeah. So it is kind of a trip
because he has an actual job. He is not a content creator. He does not care. He knows that Apple has the money to make the VFX work in that shot. Or if not, then he will be contacted to reshoot something again. He does not need to see that because he actually works on the product that was shown, the product that you still have not really asked questions about by 1/3 of the video.
Amazing
Justine,
what they can do.
please.
Out of all of the things that you guys announced today, was there anything specific that really stood out for you that was like, this is taking us to the next level?
iPad.
Certainly the single biggest
Well, he'll talk about the design, but then it's the iPad.
thing is the new design. I mean, this is just something that doesn't come along but once a decade, if that. And so that's huge. But I mean, what a big year for iPad. I feel like for those of us who love iPad and keep wanting to push it further and further, this feels so natural and yet just answers so many of the things that we've all wanted from iPad. Love the new Spotlight on Mac as someone who's hands-on keyboard, wanting to get things done very
Makes
quickly.
sense. As a software guy, he's giving even a good explanation of those features. Like, oh, that one is for everyone, right? And those of us who love iPad and those of us who are always hands-on keyboard, right? So he doesn't just talk about the features, he's also talking who they are for. He's a very smart man. So please ask him smart questions.
Actions, browsing, it's all so powerful. Live translation is awesome. I don't know, there's so many things. And as a developer, the fact that we're making with our foundation models, allowing developers to start enriching their apps by taking advantage of AI on the device to make their apps. I mean, that
Riley, what do you think she will ask him about the RAM speed or the bus length? I don't know. Ask him about what was the thinking behind the new Windows multitasking system and the cursor on iPadOS? Is Apple actually considering merging iPadOS and macOS now? Is Apple maybe considering bringing Mac-designed Mac-first apps to iPad without any porting, right? Stuff like that. Or also talk about with him about the recent regulatory pressures and what they meant. Benveni, iPadOS 26 with the M4 iPad must be crazy with the thinner design. Yeah, the M4 iPad has been steadily becoming more and more attractive to me. But the problem is we're so close to M5. But M5 is going to be like M3P. And while that doesn't bother me on iPhone, on iPad, I almost wish man, I just want give me 2 nanometer and OLED and Wi-Fi 7 and an Apple design modem, and that's all what I would get with an M6 iPad, even though I will barely feel the difference between an M6 processor and an M5 chip. I would instantly probably buy an iPad mini with the screen of the iPad Pro. I've been reading a lot more. iPad mini has higher pixel density than larger iPads. I think the aspect ratio is perfect. I think the size is basically perfect. Give it tandem OLED, give it an A19 chip even, doesn't need full performance. Give it, of course, ProMotion. Price it at $650, $700 for all I care. $800, I assume, with 256 gigabytes, and I would be so fine. Justine fangirls don't care about that though. Yeah, she probably doesn't. If I buy that, it would be my first iPad. Wow, Benveni. I guess this operating system is kind of turning you a little bit. When will be release this new iPad? It's kind of been all over the place because initially it was kind of rumored that it would be first on iPad, but I think that by early estimates it comes out after the M5 Max. So that's M5, M5 Pro, and M5 Max MacBook Pro. I hope an M5 Ultra Max Studio, but who knows? But and then early next year like an M5 iPad Pro. So it's probably at least 4 months to probably somewhere closer to 8. So if you can get a good deal on the M4 iPad Pro, you might not be losing really anything like by getting it instead of waiting. Benveni last year was going to buy, but I find Stage Manager needs improvement. It's really great now. It's really great. At least, well, it will be by the time it's out. When Riley, I use my iPad mini 10 times more than my iPhone, which is just a calling device now. Well, I guess then you can deal with the bugs of iOS 26.
State of the Union that happened after the keynote got the hugest reaction from all the developers in the audience when they realized what they were getting, because this is so empowering from them. But what that turns into is these great app experiences for people and everything.
Guys, we've been streaming for about 1.5 hours. We still have a decent amount of people watching. Thank you so much for that. Shout out for you to do all the YouTube jazz if you haven't yet done so. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. You see, I love interacting with a lively live chat, getting your opinions and things like that. Consider supporting me directly with donations in the form of a super chat or a super sticker. It all gets reinvested right into the channel. It helps me find extra time and whatever to do these streams. So everything helps. You can become a channel member here on YouTube. You can become a supporter over on Patreon. But of course, just watching, liking, all of that helps the channel too.
They're doing on the device, so that intelligence is now available to them in new ways. So it's a big year. This is all very exciting.
It's always fun, I'm sure, for you too, to see kind of the audience reaction. Sitting there, you can see like the cheers, the things that people are getting excited about. So it's so fun. But you mentioned the iPadOS, and I think that was such a huge update. I think that's probably my favorite.
Oh, good.
As a huge iPad fan, to be able to have all of those things integrated and it feel more like you would be using a Mac.
Yeah, I've been living with our new windowing system design on iPad for 8 weeks now, maybe. That
She called out the similarity to Mac. That could be like, he's smart. He could use that to talk about how they got inspired by Mac, but how they're still keeping it distinctly different from the Mac. Benveni, I will wait for iOS 26 beta 2 or public beta. Yeah, I think public beta is usually the correct call. Alarm might get messed up. Yeah, there's always stuff that could happen. And yeah, watchOS is beautiful with liquid glass. Even like the passcode, putting it in on Apple Watch is the prettiest passcode. On iPhone, it actually is a little bit wonky right now.
Enough that it could be my sort of daily driver internally. It feels fantastic. It still feels very much like an iPad. The iPad is a touch-first device, and even as I'm using this multi-windowed interface, I'm primarily interacting with the windows with touch.
And that flick was great. Thank you. That flick is why I love this windowing system. There's always one thing that needs to emotionally connect. Not everything about a system, a game or feature, whatever, needs to be perfect, but at least one thing really needs to connect. And that flick gesture that still gives me side by side, in fact, gives me actually a more powerful split screen multitasking. Now, I do lose slide over technically. At least it doesn't work in the same way, but it kind of isn't needed anymore.
elements where things feel familiar from a Mac perspective is just a little bit less of this kind of cognitive overhead.
Yeah, you can do this, but my question is why?
Of how do I do it? You know,
Right.
the window controls, being there on the left and having the colors and mousing over and there's my. Suddenly I could always close a window or maximize it before, but now it just feels like automatic, you know. And so these things feel awesome. And then we've just really.
I also think that some people don't quite understand the thinking behind designs like this, because a lot of people will say, well, we have been telling you to copy the Mac for years. Don't forget, the Mac install base, like, it's decently sized, but it's been overtaken by iPad over in just a few years of the iPad existing, and the satisfaction rate with Macs before Apple Silicon was actually under the satisfaction rates of iPhones and iPads in many ways. It wasn't until Apple Silicon that, for one, Apple sold a lot of Macs at once. So ever since the pandemic, ever since work at home became a thing and stuff like that, Apple sold a lot more Macs. Macs became much more widely known in general. The operating system became more familiar to people. And in many ways, it matched and even exceeded the satisfaction rate that people have with iPhones and iPads. So now Apple can actually say, this thing you love on the Mac, it's now super similar on your iPad while still being distinctly optimized for touch. Right? While previously, to the regular consumer, to the non-nerds, right? Because we are nerds here. If you told them, oh, we ported this feature basically from Mac, they would be like, okay, hopefully it works great. Isn't Mac more of like a mouse operating system? How do I do that with my thick fingies at this point?
Unleash the thing in terms of, have as many windows as you want. Don't even think about it.
One thing that I need to know, anybody here who has like an iPad mini or something like that, because, or even better, like an iPad, like an A16 or A14 iPad, because Apple said that this is no longer, like, Stage Manager was exclusive to bigger iPads and relatively recent ones. So my question is, what's its capabilities on like the A16 iPad? How many windows can you open? It has 6 gigs of RAM. It has a 2-generation-old chip. How does that compare to the experience of it versus what I get on my M1 iPad Pro? And are there maybe even some improvements to how many apps you might have on a 16 gigabyte system? So that's obviously something I cannot test because I myself have only one iPad, which is my M1 iPad Pro. Mark, did you install iPadOS 26? I did. Can you check how good it is to put videos on YouTube to study, for example, a language and a Note app to write down side by side? Well, I can do that right now. So I have YouTube right now open. Now, I should know that during this stream, YouTube caused the iPad to crash. But let's say I'll actually put a note here. So making the note smaller, putting YouTube up there, making YouTube smaller. Now, if we were just talking, like, you know what? Instead of like the language app, I'll just use one Safari tab. That's probably good enough, right? So like this. Can I flick this over? So that's 2 apps. That's the expose view, and then that's notes. Can I flick this somewhere too? That would be interesting what happens. Oh, and then it can overlay. That's actually not bad. It's still only 2 apps side by side. Now you guys obviously don't see what I'm talking about, and better be, because you guys would see all my notes, all my evil notes. But it works. It definitely seems stable right now, but I guess I thought that at the beginning of the stream, before YouTube alone made my iPad crash.
Just fantastic.
Jesus, stop with this thing. Are you Is she waiting for a sponsor by them? Like, but you saw even like in this view, right, with 3 apps side by side, equally spaced. So yeah, I assume that what you're asking for, Benveni, is working.
How do I do it? You know,
Right.
the window controls, being there on the left and having the colors and mousing over and there's my. Suddenly, I could always close a window or maximize it before, but now it just feels like automatic, you know. And so these things feel awesome. And then we've just really unleashed the thing in terms of, have as many windows as you want. Don't even think about it. These are just fantastic improvements. So I think for iPad lovers, like apparently you and I
love it.
It's going to be big.
Now, Apple Intelligence, you guys announced so many new things.
Yeah.
Now, I know I don't want to bring it up, but I feel like everyone's going to be mad if I don't ask you.
Okay.
So you guys did announce some things last year that didn't make it out this year.
Yes.
So what can we expect kind of in terms of that?
Well,
Well, no, you ask him, do you have any further comments on that? And, okay, Riley, you asked me, okay, she is a fangirl, right? What do you expect her to ask? Well, the most basic journalistic question here in question is, do I have any further comments on the delay, right? Maybe how it happened. He could just refuse to answer. That's fine as well. But then the other is, how do you expect to prevent that such a thing happening in the future, right? To not cause the company embarrassments, PR problems, and whatever, right? Do you expect any similar thing this year or whatever? And what? Also, another question that you guys have had here in the chat, and the question that I think makes a lot of sense to ask of Craig: what does in the coming year mean for Siri? How early should we expect her in the year and stuff like that? Those are very easy journalistic questions that you don't need journalistic training for to be able to ask it.
what we said, you're right. Last year, I mean, we spent, I don't know, 40 minutes talking about Apple Intelligence, and there was in the Siri section.
And this year we spent 10 minutes talking about Apple Intelligence. Can you guess why our event is not 2 hours long, but 90 minutes? Right? That's exactly the half-hour difference. I assume if Siri had actually launched, even if it had launched by like May, then we would have actually gotten Apple to talking a lot more about AI that's going to be happening next year, right? Even maybe late next year, because Apple would have been a lot more confident in showing delayed features. But like, as long as it's like a 2, 3, 4 month delay, I don't think they would care. But now that they have to deal with like a year-long delay, they're a lot more cautious.
About many things we did release, typing to Siri, product knowledge in Siri, the ability to deal with disfluency and conversational context. There were a lot of things that were really exciting to get out there, but there are a few things that didn't. And what we said a while ago was that we were really working hard to get those things to come together and had them working internally, but not working well enough. You know, when you have an experience like asking Siri to do something, either it becomes something you can depend on reliably, or it's something in the end you're just not going to use. And we were not able to take the approach we were taking to the quality level in the time frame that initially we thought.
You know what? You guys probably know her, but we have a famous German model here in Germany called Heidi Klum. I have no idea if she's in her late 40s now or early 50s, but she's on freaking every underwear ad page or ad poster that you find outside. It's highly photoshopped and whatever. But like if Justine and Craig did an underwear collab, I would buy the underwear probably, because it just would be funny. This is where late stage capitalism would just like fry my brain, and I would buy underwear from a content creator and the one of the company executives of a multi-trillion-dollar international company.
Thought we could, and so we're continuing to build on it. We really look forward to releasing everything we talked about in the past and more. We don't really want to commit to that until we have it in hand.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
There was a cut, so I assume maybe she asked the question, or maybe he paused for a longer time and asked and kind of thought it was worth answering. He said, we do not want to commit that, so there's no concrete release date. So to anybody here who was asking what does in the coming year mean, well, Apple is not committing to what it means. I mean, in the worst case, it could be December of 2026.
I know for me personally, I would rather it work than just be
Exactly.
like, oh, like I'm really sad this didn't work well.
And that's a good, like, if you are going to be a little bit friendly, right? I do think that that's the correct thing to say, to seem friendly to an executive. And this is why I really disliked the way John Gruber wrote that article about something is rotten at Cupertino and whatever, right? Because I do believe if you are this confrontational, the only thing you get is no comment further on, right? It's different from politics where the stakes are so high that, yeah, you as a journalist should be as confrontational as possible, and you should also be banking on your colleagues to be similarly confrontational, because if you lose your access to like a politician, at least then the politician might not be able to get a friendly treatment from somebody else. Unfortunately, that does not happen. There are always outlets who are friendlier to one side rather than the other. But here, you are supposed to have a bit of a personal touch. If she used that freaking dolly to ask him more serious questions, I would even forgive that stupid dolly. Do you think they can figure out or give up all if not working? The report was from Mark Gurman and like another person at Bloomberg, was that it was like ready by like 2/3 to 80%. So, and don't forget, like a lot of people will just be like, can they get it to work? My honest answer, can they get it to work fully? The answer is probably not. But if you think about the AI that we have been getting over the last few years, has any of it worked fully? There's been an article by Apple engineers, actually, about AI. Apple AI puzzle solving. God, please, please. The illusion of thinking. Apple research finds AI models collapse and give up with hard puzzles. So basically, AI is extremely good at pattern recognition because it's getting fed so much data. But Apple's, and other things have shown it too, that that if you give it a task that might not even be super complicated, but you ask, but it's very novel in the way it is constructed, right? Then you will actually get what are currently like 1/3, 66%, 2/3 success ratios. You will see them falling down close to zero. That is where like chatbot AI currently is at, right? Now maybe the latest versions would be a little better or whatever, but you get what I'm talking about. And also AI is unpredictable. Even if it can get the right result, it won't give it the right result to everyone. So for example, there is this I don't know what it's based on, but it's like question man goose, is it goose or is it man fox boat? Is that, or is it with a sheep? Famous detective riddle: farmer with a fox, a chicken, and blah blah blah, and they want to cross the river, right? So how many times do you have to go back and forth before the chicken so the chicken doesn't eat the corn and the fox doesn't eat the chicken? If you ask that to AI in a very predictable way, AI will basically give you a 100% correct answer, because at this point AI just isn't thinking. AI is just copy pasting the result that it has from the internet. But if you rephrase the question, it might actually tell you the exact same thing as if you ask the original question, because it's just always expect, oh, it's this riddle, so I'm giving this answer, right? So AI can never be 100% perfect, because similar to the human brain, even though it is not actually reasoning. It's not actually thinking. It does rely a lot on pattern recognition, and sometimes it might apply the wrong pattern. Now, Siri is trying something much more lower scale, right? But do I think it will be 100% perfect? No. Do I think it will be good enough for Apple to not give up on it? I think they will do that. And I think that it will probably be, my personal prediction is probably March or April of next year. And the idea for Apple will be, it's delayed by exactly a year. And if the team cannot deliver it after an extra 12 months, then we will have to rethink our internal AI team, right? I do not, if it has to be delayed further, maybe by 2-3 months, that's okay. Though then it overlaps with the next WWDC, and that's going to be a big PR problem. Because at that point, Apple would need to show that a dub and new AI features. That's going to be iffy. But yeah, my prediction is it's coming next March or April. Maybe even not all at once. Maybe some stuff comes out already in February, and then some stuff comes closer to May. And I do expect it to work good enough for what was announced. But I do not expect it to be like groundbreaking at this point, of course.
But you have a bunch of new Apple Intelligence things coming out in the fall, and I cannot wait. The visual intelligence, especially for the shopping, super fun.
It's a different take on circle to search. I mean, it's good that Apple has that now, but it's definitely nothing groundbreaking.
Making that just right at your fingertips, and I felt like the gesture that we're all so used to doing of just squeezing those two buttons. So I'm going to take a screenshot and say, now I can do that and say search, do that and say ask, highlight something, get a suggestion, create a calendar event automatically with the on-screen intelligence. I think it's just going to become just automatic. So
I actually haven't tried it. Is that already online? What's the button combination for visual intelligence, actually? I know that it's not on the iPad, but and I cannot test it on my iPhone right now because my iPhone is my continuity camera, but
so much intelligence at your fingertips, not switching apps, copy pasting or anything, but just having it right there in the flow of your experience, I think can be so.
Oh, by the way, one thing that I did want to complain about, I do not like the name being under the photo. I don't need that. If I'm chatting with somebody, I already know their name. Show me the name or show me the photo or show them to me in one line. Don't waste vertical space on the photo and the name. My assumption is that Apple at some point really wants to move beyond Face ID, at least the dynamic island, and free up more vertical space somehow. But yeah, this looks like it's wasting space, even though I know that's not the case because the upper message is something that I have already read. But still, I would just prefer this to be less tall or less deep and just show me the face here and then the name to the side of that.
Right there in the flow of your experience, I think can be so powerful. And I think visual intelligence is really going to bring that this year.
Yeah, and even everything with continuity, because it's we're always using all of these different devices. So to have everything kind of have that one central home.
But she's not asking, she's advertising. Jesus.
Awesome.
Not going to argue with you there.
It's so
okay.
Yeah. Well, happy WWDC 2025.
Craig, you deserve so much better.
I look forward to seeing you again next year. It'll be great.
Well, thank you. And
she doesn't have a name yet. We can let them name her in the comments.
Oh my God, please don't tell me people were actually naming it. Thank you so much for bringing up Siri. Look at Justine with Craig in the video. Justine is an OG, true. Been following her since 2008 days. Jesus. Her presence on the internet is basically as old as the iPhone. Thank you, Craig, for being the adult in the room, vindicating iPad's potential. Don't use portrait mode. This is for TikTok. I assume this is actually a TikTok video, primarily. OMG, iPad OS looks so amazing. There are no names for the... Shouldn't she have called her, Craig or something like that? Just for just for funsies, right? Respect Apple showed us some useful features. Make Siri great again by German flag. Love Craig. Great interview, Jess. Hey Siri, stop. Speaking of AI, hey Siri, pause. That's what's up, Jiffer. I have screaming matches with my own HomePod, and I'm analyzing the comments in the iJustine section. Am I not ranked? Not that it matters. No, you came in way too late. So Benveni is actually number 1 today. Jan is number 2. And it doesn't actually show me who number 3 is, at least not by... Riley is actually number 3 today for coming in late. I hope I can get on the board. Well, if you comment enough and Riley keeps on sleeping, then maybe you will actually overtake him. Guys, I have to... don't forget, guys, super chat, super stickers do give you XP in the chat. Do you have anything else for me to react to that's actually like worth reacting? Like, I know, for example, if you look into my downloads quickly, you'll find that, yeah, Mr. Rooster Boss, KBHD, they have reacted to this, right? And they are big summaries, but I'm not reacting to a 47-minute video right now. This is already a longer stream than I expected. Jeffrey calling this a terrible OS update. Well, if you want all my thoughts, you will have to watch the video from the beginning. Riley, I don't believe you, but if it is true, then I wish your mother all the best. And thoughts and prayers with her. Riley saying he wasn't sleeping, but he's taking his mom to the hospital. He's either manipulating me or he is correct, at which point I sound like a complete asshole. That's why I hedged my bets a bit. But yeah, as somebody who recently had to deal with personal stuff, I fully understand. Jeffrey, the leader of the Liquid Glass was harassed so much on X yesterday. Do you mean... oh my God, I forgot. The guy who... by the way, I hate Twitter so much. Alan Dye, the Vision OS guy, is that who you mean? The problem is, and I have that here, right? So individual issues with iOS 26 right now, to me, don't suggest that they all will be maintained. This is the first beta. My broad thinking on this UI, and this will be somewhat my closing statement, so thank you guys for still being with me after almost 2 hours, is that I think that it's a great idea, and I love the unified nature. Of course I have 5G, Riley. Jesus Christ. It's like, I literally have like black and white caviar in my fridge. I love caviar, right? It's in small, it doesn't cost too much, but that's like a luxury thing. But like, you cannot really accuse somebody in 2025 of having 5G. It's just like, oh, bro has 5G. What a baller. But Jeffrey, back to you. I think the core idea behind the UI is great. I think that there are elements in it that are overcorrecting from previous designs, just as iOS 7 overcorrected initially from the skeuomorphic designs in the past. iOS 7 had a little bit too much transparency and translucency in the control center and in the keyboard, for example. It had too many neon, it had too bright, like neon colors almost for the app icons in place. It ran poorly performance-wise actually on older hardware than like the iPhone 4S, for example. Well, mainly the iPhone 4 in this question. But here I see bugs and issues, like this to me is easily solved with a blur, with a stronger blur in the background, the same way we have a blur we had a blur in the previous control center. Jimmy, on and one, before you leave, hear me out. I can fix all of this. Give me 1 second for the fix. Well, okay, we're gonna have to see. 1 second is over, Jimmy. There's Dave 2D video about dub, and it's only 5 minutes. Jesus. Is it again gonna be something that like makes me angry? Because Dave 2D does sometimes have weird ways to summarize things. It's not an interview, but I promise he wouldn't promote a doll. And, well, now I'm less excited, man. The problem that Apple doesn't know how to solve is that they're not using the screen's accelerometer. I actually agree. And I actually have suggested that when the front page tech leaks were coming out, that yes, I think Apple should be utilizing the parallax effect that they currently have a little bit like on the home screen. They should be, for example, I believe it's you, Riley, who complained about the glossiness of the icons on the edges. I don't think they should be baked into the actual app icon. I think they should be dynamically reflecting and refracting based on how you move your phone. Now it becomes a bit more of an issue on a stationary OS like a Mac, but at least on the iPhone, that would be one major solve.
Like if you look
let's see what Dave 2D has to say, and then we're gonna be wrapping this up. One last shout out, we are now 2 hours into it. Subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, super chatting, super stickering, channel member making, and Patreon subscribing. That's the things I'm recommending to you guys.
Apple's WWDC for 2025 was different from what we usually get. So right off the rip, all of Apple's operating systems are getting renamed numerically. So instead of individual OS history version numbers, they're all just being renamed for the next iteration to just 26, in reference to the year that the majority of devices would be running these new operating systems. So the big change across all of their devices is a visual change that they call liquid glass. And it's a design that's inspired by how real glass interacts with light, like it bends and refracts and reflects light across different layers of the interface. And when you think about it, there's a lot of stuff happening when light interacts with glass, and they've tried to capture a lot of those details in the visuals of their new UI.
Okay, that's pretty good basic summary of the actual design.
The name of liquid glass is just so on brand for Apple.
Yeah.
It's not like Apple's the first company that's come out with like a transparent glass UI, right? I mean, Windows Aero did it years ago, and a bunch of operating systems.
Oh, it's Aero. Okay, it's not Aero, which I guess makes sense because when you look at Final Fantasy, her name is Aerith and not Aerith.
Phones have it. And Apple's iteration of it, I must say, at the very least, it's like the most high effort. Like if you look at just the zoomed in shots of this stuff, it looks really cool. Like when they were punched in on the text, it looks like a bubble of water, like how it bends the light around the edges like that. It's visually very interesting to look at, especially when it's a device that's close to your face like your phone, but they've applied it to all of their OSs. The other one that I thought was interesting was like the tvOS, where when the UI pops up, it's not just some simple translucency effect. They have all these little details that make it look like there's different thicknesses of glass in the elements, of liquid glass across the UI. It has a lot of detail and a lot of effort put into it. But there's a few things that come to my mind. First is that as cool as these transparency effects look, it's one thing to just like kind of admire them from afar, but it's another thing to use it. I find that a lot of them are just distracting.
Riley, the gaming app is not half-assed. The gaming app is... people forget how good the App Store is for gaming on iPhone and iPad already. But then the solution, the thing that it solves is how bad gaming is on the Mac App Store. And here, the gaming app does not seem half-assed. Plus, it's now consistent across iPhone, iPad, and Mac, and whatever. Benvini, you cannot wait for Resident Evil. Yeah, but Resident Evil 9 looks dope. Supposedly, Leon is the main character, so the main guy from from Resident Evil 4. I wonder if that's actually gonna be the case. But the trailer obviously showed the daughter of the guy from like the last trilogy. Like, well, is it a trilogy? No, it's just 7 and 8. But supposedly Leon will show up.
When you're actually trying to get stuff done or just like use your device. As an example, if you're trying to just look at text punched in, you just want
The trailer says it's the main. The girl is the main character, but there are rumors that somewhere at a point in the game, Leon shows up and might not take over as the main character, but basically makes this a 50-50 thing. She will have like her magic powers, but like or world-changing powers, whatever. And Leon will still have like his guns, his kicks, and given the great success of the Resident Evil 4 remake, it's likely.
See the enlarged text. You don't want to see all these like little text effects on the side that make it look like it's looking in a glass bubble. As cool as it is, I just find it, for me, I think I would just turn off all of that stuff if I could. And I think a lot of people would do the same. But the other thing, all of these visual effects, the transparency, the different layers, all of it, you got to use the GPU and RAM and consequently battery life on these devices. Like all of it definitely taxes the system in some form or another. And when you look at the list of phones that can run iOS 26, it's nothing crazy. They even have like the iPhone 11 on there. So I imagine any iPhone with 4 gigs of RAM or more could do it.
Wait, the iPhone SE second generation has 3 gigabytes, doesn't it? Tech specs, iPhone SE second gen. RAM. Yeah, it's 3 gigabytes. People are underestimating Apple's ability to optimize. If this device can run it, I'm pretty sure everything else can. It does support the second gen, right? It's not the third gen. Yeah. It's 22 and 20. It's 2020 and 2022, so it's the second and third gen, just excluding the original. I noticed my 16 Plus is slower in games now that I'm running Glass. Bro, it's the first beta. There is no chance in hell you're trying to evaluate performance based on the first beta.
Imagine any iPhone with 4 gigs of RAM or more could do it, but the devices with less capable hardware have some kind of like adaptive rendering, or maybe they just have a lot of the visual effects turned off. But when it comes to the macOS devices, it's a little bit different.
By the way, and this is something else, a piece of news that I haven't covered. Apple has actually come out that this is the last major version of macOS to support Intel Macs. So basically, the redesign is kind of like a gift to Intel Macs at the very last. macOS 27 will not support Intel Macs, just Apple Silicon ones. Imagine if they cut iPhone 11 lineup and if they cut SE2, I don't think people would actually complain. Like, I think people understand that at some point Apple wants to get away from the 4.7-inch form factor, which is funny because that would mean like the SE3 would also have to be cut, which that would be definitely received more poorly.
For the laptops, if you're running Apple Silicon, you're good. But if you're running one of the older Intel chips, you need one of the more powerful Intel laptops. Like, you can't run the 2020 MacBook Air. That seemingly won't be able to pull off macOS 26. I don't know how much of that is a GPU requirement.
No, it's just the development effort. Apple just doesn't want to keep programming for that. They have probably actually lost a lot of development talent that was more focused on x86 programming, which makes a lot of sense to me. They probably let some of those people go. Some people might be retired. So Apple is just transitioning fully away. x86, they will like give those Macs like some security patches and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, it's kind of game over after this for Intel Macs. Jiffer, Martech, dude, macOS on Intel needs to die. Yeah, it is die. I fully support it. I would have supported it if it had died this year.
versus a RAM requirement for the AI components, but
No. It has nothing to do with that. It's just with the nature of the programming effort. It's the same reason why Mario Kart World is only on the Nintendo Switch 2. Like, could you have gotten like a 720p version of it running at 30 frames per second, maybe without the 24 player mode on the Switch 1? Sure. But why, right? At that point, it would be a worse game in many ways than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And the same goes for like Intel Max. Like, can all this stuff run? Yes. But for one, it's the expertise to even optimize something for x86. Don't forget, x86 is also a mishmash between Intel CPUs and also Intel integrated GPUs and AMD dedicated GPUs. So that's more confusion. I fully understand why Apple is moving beneath that. A few days ago, I saw YouTube saying that his M1 Mac was lagging. I have an M1 Max MacBook Pro. I mean, granted, that's more RAM and stuff like that, and more bandwidth, and more cores too. But like for single core stuff, it usually never lags either. So my expectation is this might be somebody who is either experiencing RAM issues, biting significantly more than the system is designed to chew, or that person simply does not understand what it means when a system takes time instead of a system lagging, right? Technically, everything lags because nothing on our devices happens literally instantaneously. Dude, my M4 MacBook Air lags. It depends on what you're doing. Yeah, that's perfectly put, Jiffer. That's why I'm so happy to have some of you here who are either hardcore enthusiasts with realistic and detailed understandings. Some of you are developers who actually program some of this stuff. I'm really grateful to have all of your guys' input here.
Disappointed to see a 5-year-old device just not being supported by this operating system. Now, let's talk about AI for a second. I'm thankful that they didn't have like a whole thing about AI. The AI stuff they did talk about was like spattered throughout their whole presentation, and it just seems like there's nothing wildly ambitious. It's just small things that we've seen from other companies, like live translations and more Genmoji stuff, some on-screen AI assistants. It's all just little tools that are nice to have access to. The thing they did with the photos was cool. Like you can take these 2D photos and apply.
I'm trying this when the stream ends.
It looked pretty cool from the demos we saw, but it was interesting to me that they had no mention, there's no details about like the personalized Siri experience that they talked about.
Wait, they talked about it. They acknowledged that it needs more time. Come on, I feel like that's unfair. That's talking out of both sides of your mouth. Like, you cannot say, oh, Apple overpromised last year. This year, they actually came out on stage, acknowledged that they bit more, a little bit off a little bit more than they could chew, and that they would be providing you more information in the coming year. And now that they have come out and said this, people are like, well, I am confused why they didn't talk about it.
WWDC. Like, it just really seems like that whole product stack was just so...
Yeah, Jiffer, there is obviously a difference between like between multi-core performance. Obviously, you have a lot more GPU cores. Like technically, even like an M1 Pro in many ways still like is competitive with like an base M4 chip. Right, especially we're looking at like the bin chip when we're looking at multi-core performance, when we're looking at GPU performance. There are obviously architectural features that become a different kind of cutoff, like hardware accelerated mesh shading and ray tracing, the neural engine, unless you count the fact that some technically have, like the Max chips technically have double the ANEs. So yeah, there are always different points at where you could design to cut off, right? And that is going to be interesting for the future of Apple Silicon. Will Apple cut off based on memory? True. It's not just cores, it's channels, it's memory bandwidth. There is so many. It's overall amount of cache, right? There's so, like, even bandwidth is not always memory bandwidth, but there's also like effective bandwidth. That's also what you get when you include the cache. It's really complicated, and the Intel Macs are they're just so far behind on those issues. Mui Jordan saying, how do you feel about iOS 26 so far? I'm really liking it. I think it has some obvious points where it needs more refinement and even downright fixing, but overall, I am really enjoying it. Benveni tomorrow live will tell us about his experience about iOS 26 so far. Yeah, I'll be going into more detail because, right, I will have like the next 2-3 hours. Like, I wanted to go into more depth today. The issue is that it took me literally like 4 hours yesterday until every device was updated to the betas, right? It was painful to see how long that took.
So underbaked when they
And then once that happened, like all devices took like a good half hour to index all data. So that basically was like 2 a.m. by the time I could actually use those devices.
Announce it that. Yeah, clearly it's not ready even a year later. Okay, a few things of note.
I mean, it's not a year later. It was never introduced to be launched by this WWDC. It was always supposed to come out in sometime in 2025, and now it's coming sometime in 2026.
First, Vision OS now has clocks and windows.
Okay, Jeffrey, that's a fun one. I'm going to read that out. I messaged Zach from Jerry Rig Everything and said, Apple's liquid glass is glass and glass breaks. That's a funny one. And not the hugest fan of most of the content by Jerry Rig, but he is entertaining in that way. His commentary during his destruction videos is somewhat funny.
Windows and pictures that you can stick on your wall, and the personas in there look way better than they used to. But they also showed some marketing material where they had two people with.
But yeah, and this is one thing that I feel like does not get enough coverage. It's not the individual feature of like, oh, Vision Pro now shares your environment with somebody else. That's a feature people asked ever since Vision Pro came out. Oh, Vision OS has now actually personas that look almost real life, right? Those are refinements, those are added features that sometimes are worked on even before they're talked about. Well, they are worked on before they're talked about on stage, but they're worked on even when an old version gets introduced, right? Apple is like, oh, we have this new persona, it has like AI stuff and whatever, it uses like almost Unreal Engine like stuff, but it just needs refinement. So we need to launch something right now. And shared environments, again, this is pairing between devices, and it needs to be optimized for low latency and whatever. All that stuff, believe me, Apple has had like a shimmer in their eyes for all of that, even before original Vision Pro with original Vision OS came out. But it took some time. And the same thing is happening with Apple Intelligence. The same thing is happening with the liquid glass overall design.
Vision Pro's on, and it's like, it looks very superfluous to me when I saw it. Now the other thing is iPadOS Pro's on, and it's like, it looks very superfluous to me when I saw it.
Superfluous? Like not needed? Why?
Now the other thing is,
huh? What? Wait, am I getting the definition of superfluous right? Superfluous definition. Unnecessary. Really? Wait, you think that these things are wait, what? You realize that Vision Pro is not always going to be a like $3,000, $4,000 product. If you want virtual reality to take off, you need shared environments. Why would any of that be superfluous to you? I would get if you talked about that about the put a clock on your wall or a calendar. Well, those are fun things. I could see why somebody might say, they're kind of superfluous, they're a little bit gimmicky. But these things are anything but gimmicky. Where does this guy get off? Like, does he not understand that different product categories need different experiences?
iPadOS, which had a big bump in usability for multitasking. So it's much more like macOS in terms of a menu bar and the 3 buttons on the top left that allow you to manipulate your panels and move them around. It's something that people have been wanting forever, so I'm very glad to see it finally happening on the iPad ecosystem. But the whole of WWDC was just typically, it's a developers conference, so there's a lot of software, but typically it's more about usability and functionality. And this time around I was really focused on the aesthetics of.
Yes, aesthetics are a part of software. Just like graphics are a part of games. There's a lot of people are like, oh, you could give me N64 graphics and I would still be happy as long as the gameplay is good. Well, that is true. Do you really want your games to not look better? Do you really not want your operating system to be a bit more fun and change over time? I really don't get it. It's if he Jiffer, to you personally, because if you dislike the design, right, that's fine. You can dislike the design, absolutely. That's just a matter of opinion. But disliking the focus on design, especially coming from Apple, that's just weird. This is a completely different philosophical argument. Benveni, I can't stand those people who keep saying that Steve Jobs wouldn't approve for stuff here and there. Some people view him like a saint, let the man go. Yeah, I let that go by iOS 7, right? With that huge redesign, I was because people were saying the same things back then. Oh, Steve would be rolling around in his grave or whatever. And I was like, does it really matter? Steve isn't there. At that point, even Scott Forstall was then gone. And I was like, it's not going to be the same company. It's fine if you dislike it, but please have actually the mental capacity to reject it based on your own terms, not on Steve wouldn't like it.
Liquid glass. But there you have it. This is something that we're going to be trying shortly. I have it installing on.
Also, by the way, guys, in future videos, I will be talking about some other topics too, like the Xbox handheld and what that could mean for gaming in the future. If you also go to the history of this channel, you will see that we'll also talk a lot about processors and hardware in general across the board. So plenty of stuff for us to cover, even as the earliest hype about dub dies down. Of course, I'll keep covering newer betas, big changes in the betas and stuff like that. So keep your eye out on that. So before I fully leave you, thank you so much for the success of yesterday's video. Thank you for tuning in large numbers today. Thank you even for joining the Discord. Before I leave, I want to give you one last shout out to do the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here. If you like this video and you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. And please, that's to all of you who are super engaged, Benveni, Jiffer, Riley, everyone else in the beginning whose names I am now slowly forgetting because it's now been 2 hours. RR, Severe Weather, and everyone else like that. Mohammed. Please don't just comment in the live, but also comment afterwards. It helps tremendously to have comments in the comment section. Helps with the algorithm, helps attract new people. So that really helps. Whenever you catch me live, consider leaving a super chat or super sticker. Consider becoming a channel member. Consider becoming a supporter over on Patreon. And just consider following me on the socials. The links for that you will see in the description of the channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully, there should be nothing coming up. If not, then definitely on Thursday. I promise you daily streams. At worst, there will be a small gap. So thank you. Thank you so much for everything. And of course, as always, let me know what else you would like to see me cover. This is Mark Tech, tuning out. And you even get big mark for the end.